From the snow-capped mountains of the west to the cypress swamps of the south and everywhere in between. This is the Southern Flight Podcast. I'm your host, Robbie Nelson. You are listening to the Southern Flight Podcast. Today's guest is Mr. Jake Latendresse. For those of you guys who have not been introduced to Jake, I probably first heard about him this 2026. We were just talking about this. It's probably been at least 8 years. He had a series on Rocky LaFour's old podcast, The End of the Line. And End of the Line did a series about Jake called The Climb, about his life. And if any of you guys haven't heard that, I would highly recommend trying to see if you could find those in the archives. I bet they're still out there somewhere. But Jake's done a lot of interesting stuff in his life for sure. He's still doing a lot of interesting stuff. I'm glad to have him on here today. One thing we're going to talk about is forward-facing sonar, and it'll make sense why I have Jake on here in a few minutes once he tells you what he does for a living. We'll talk a little bit about duck hunting a little bit later on because he's done some really cool stuff in the duck hunting world. So, Jake, how you been doing, man?
Good, Robbie. Thank you for having me, man.
Oh, man, I appreciate you coming on. It's an honor talking to you. I've always been on the other side of things listening to you. Well, I guess I'm going to listen to you again, but typically somebody else talking to you. So for the listeners at home that do not know who you are and what you do, tell everybody about what your involvement is with B.A.S.S.
Yeah, so I'm one of the field producers for the Bassmaster television TV show. I've been doing that for 15 years, and to simplify the concept of what I do, I stand on the back of a boat and film anglers. In the elite series, I filmed the Bassmaster Opens. I filmed the college national championships, the high school national championships, and whatever else they come up with. And they're gonna, if they air it, then I'm usually there filming. So, yeah, that's what I do. It's an exciting job. I definitely don't do it for the money. I do it more for the passion of bass fishing, the ability to learn new things from the elite anglers and the opens, and even the high school and college kids know way more than they're unbelievably educated and very committed to what they're doing. So I learn from all those guys, and that's really why I do it.
Well, Jake, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on today is because you have a perspective about this forward-facing sonar that a lot of people won't. And what I mean by that is you've got the young guys that grew up learning, that's how they learned how to fish, that's what they know. You've got the old guys that some of them probably pick right up on it and are great, but some of them might not be. And it seems like there's a fine line there to where guys either absolutely love it or guys either absolutely hate it. With you, now, how long have you been filming for B.A.S.S?
15 years. This is my 15th season.
So there's nobody better to talk to than you about this because you've been there before forward-facing sonar was even a thing. And then you've seen the transition through, and then now it's almost like full-blown, and it's just, Dylan Nutt that just won. When you go on there and you look at any social media post that was posted by B.A.S.S or posted by Wired to Fish or any of these big outlets, media outlets, if you click on the comments, 90% of them are take away the video game and he can't catch a fish, or nice cheat box, or, you've seen them. And I have a hard time with that. My biggest thing is I don't even bass fish that much anymore. But why do I care? I care because I care about anything outdoors, right? And you always hear we need to get more youth involved. We need to keep youth involved. Well, you get these young guys involved, right? These guys are for lack of better terms, they're kicking ass. I mean, they really are. They've learned how to use this technology and perfect it. And then you get them trained up to this elite stage like this. And then everybody's like, they're getting hit from every angle with all these negative comments. Now, I haven't really seen any of the pro anglers doing any of this. It's mostly your social media warriors in the comment section. But I kind of wanted to get your perspective on what are your thoughts about what are the older pros, because I know you know a lot of those guys. What are the older pros thinking about it? What do you think? I don't know. I just want to get your opinion on where you think the state of bass fishing is, where it was, and where it's going.
So, I mean, first of all, I would like to, clarify something. These young guys like Dylan Nutt, Tucker Smith, Logan Parks, all these guys, Easton Fothergill, they didn't learn how to bass fish with forward facing sonar. I mean, they did it just like everybody else. They started in farm ponds. They, in John boats, they moved into 10-foot kayaks with trolling motors on them. And then, an old bass boat, and they just evolved over time. And so they knew, and I guess I'll jump ahead a little bit because this is sort of necessary in the explanation. I really don't think it's front-facing sonar that has brought them to such a high level. I think it's the access to information, because when they turn their front forward-facing sonar on, I'm just going to call it scoping or live scope.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't. They're using their live scope to advance old techniques. And yes, they learned how to find pelagic fish in open water environments, but Easton Fothergill didn't figure that out. Tucker Smith didn't figure that out. They actually figured that out on Lake Champlain a few years ago when Cody Huff and Justin Hamner and Patrick Walters were out in 40 and 50 feet of water in this one area of Lake Champlain, and they were literally um, chasing smallmouth in either solo or in really small pods, and they would cast to them. And at that time, they weren't using minnows; they were using crankbaits and jerk baits and jigs or whatever else they were using. And all of a sudden, these big pods of fish were coming up off the bottom, rising like volcanoes to their baits. They could see, because it was clear water and they could see that far. So, you go back in time and you look at some of the big wins on the Elite Series, even in 2022 when Jason Christie won the Bassmaster Classic at Hartwell, which I was in his boat. He didn't win it exclusively with forward-facing sonar, but that's where he caught all of his big fish, in that ditch on Lake Hartwell with live scope and a minnow. All right. And Patrick Walters, when he bagged the freaking mega sacks on Lake Fork, and won that tournament, he was doing that with forward facing sonar and a jerk bait. So, and live scope is not a brand new concept like it appears to be.
Right.
It's actually been around for quite a while. It's just that people didn't really understand it or know how to use it until the elite guys. They're the ones that refined it. Those middle-aged, the guys that seem like they're older now, they're really not. They're still in their, late 20s or early 30s to mid 30s, maybe even late 30s. They're the ones that figured it out. So what do the young guys do? They're sitting there watching YouTube. They're watching Bassmaster Live. They're watching the Opens. They're watching the Classic. They're watching Patrick Walters win. And they're like, I'm going to get a live scope. And not all of them just went to their parents and got a donation from their parents to go get a live scope. Some of them, used tournament winning money that they won in traditional bass, with traditional bass techniques, to earn the money to go buy a live scope. Like Dylan Nutt, as I understand it, when he won a tournament in either Tennessee or Alabama, on Pickwick, I think he won a tournament. Oh no, his high school national championship. He took that money. I think they won $7,000. He took that money and went bought live scope with it. And he won that national championship amongst 340 or 350 boats, whatever it is nowadays. He won that tournament fishing traditionally. And no, he wasn't fishing against the elite anglers, but he was fishing against the best kids in his age group from all over the country, from,
Right.
basically 40 something states or whatever it is. So, I just want to clarify that they're not just video game freaks that sit in their basement playing, Call of Duty and these different video games to learn how to do it. They might understand how things work digitally better because they did grow up in the digital video game world. But at the end of the day, and something that I debate with people all the time, is that I don't look at it like it's a video game, because these guys are refining their skills, and they're coming up with new ways to catch fish because they're learning more every single day. Like literally, we are living in a revolutionary period in the bass fishing world, where people are learning new things every day, and they learn about fish habits, they learn about fish habitat, they learn about, even Rick Clunn will tell you, you know the things that they thought they knew up until live scope. They've learned that a lot of those things have been debunked by watching fish and their behavior with live scope. So I'm all for it. I'm an advocate. I totally get both sides. I understand why people, traditionalists, they call themselves traditionalists. I don't necessarily believe that totally, but I'll give that to them in this debate, and that, let's call them traditionalists. I get why they're upset, because it's changing the game. It is definitely, there's no doubt about it, a game changer. But at the end of the day, they still have to go out. They have to know where the fish are. They have to find the fish, and they have to get those fish to bite. And the people that are debating live scope, I'm not saying they don't understand live scope. I'm guessing, just as a hypothesis, that they don't fully understand it, because it's not like they just go out there and they see a fish and they throw a minnow to it, and all of a sudden the fish bites it and they reel it in, and it's a 10-pounder, and they throw it in the live well, and they're winning these tournaments that way. They struggle just like they did 5 years ago, before live scope was really relevant in the industry. They struggle to catch fish. I was in the boat with Drew Cook on day 2 and day 3. He got him good on day 2, at the Classic, and he was in second place. He was 4 pounds behind Dylan Nutt going into the championship Sunday, and he was all over fish. He was throwing jerk baits. He threw everything he could possibly think of at these fish, and they were all over his baits. He just couldn't get him to eat it. So, the debate about, making it easier, it makes it easier to find fish, because they're taking the knowledge that they already know, like, points, the backs of creeks, wherever they think the bait fish are, they go, they exploit it with live scope. Just, it's the same spots that they were fishing traditionally. And it does help them find the fish quicker. There's no doubt about it. And they have learned to decipher between a 2-pounder and a 6-pounder on live scope. And I was there when Ben Milliken and Josh Jones were, Lee Livesey was talking to those guys just on the phone when they were really catching big fish at OHIV in Texas. And I went down to Texas, and Lee and I were going to go to Ivy, to film him. Possibly, we're trying to catch a 13-pounder. And so we actually got frozen out that year. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. And we went to this different lake that didn't have ice on it. And he was throwing an umbrella rig and an Alabama rig. And so what those guys, like Ben Milliken was telling Lee, who was trying to figure out, how do you decipher between a small fish and a big fish? And a typical standard 8-inch Alabama rig, when you cast it out and it's deployed and you're reeling it through the water column, you can see it on your live scope. And when a fish comes up to it, if it's the same size as an A rig, it's a 4-pounder. That's that's the size comparison. If it's double the size, then it's an 8-pounder. If it's bigger than that, it's bigger than an 8-pounder. If it's somewhere between the same size, the Alabama rig, and double that size, if it's somewhere in between, it might be a 5 or 6-pounder. So that's how the whole concept of judging the size of fish on your live scope really started. And the young guys just started picking up on that from watching, you know, Garmin clips or Humminbird clips. And these pros were putting this information out. So then they go out, and these young guys have way more time on their hands than we do because they're not married. They don't have kids. They're a lot of them are fishing at the pro level, or they have the ability to fish every single day on Lake Gunnersville or Lake Martin or Kentucky Lake or Nickajack, wherever. And they spend so much time studying what they're seeing on the graphs that they understand it better than we do because they're out there looking at it. They know what size a fish is when they throw a V110 jerkbait in there. They know what size, like not to the ounce, but they know if it's a 3-pounder or a 5-pounder or an 8-pounder when it swims up to the bait, just based on the amount of time that they've spent watching it. So they might bypass a smaller fish because they're wasting their time trying to catch a 2-pounder when they need a 5 or 6-pounder to upgrade to get, to move up in the standings. So, there's so much to talk about, Robbie. There's you can't possibly remember everything there is to justify live scope. And my theory is, if you don't like it, don't use it. If you don't like watching it, don't watch it. I mean, you have options.
Fair enough. I think that the bashing of these young guys, and again, it's probably mostly just social media guys that are sitting on their couch that probably don't fish that much anyway. But the bashing of these young guys for using, and it's not just like once or twice. I mean, anything you look at, it just gets so old. And I'm just, in a time where we're supposed to be getting youth involved and everything, you get them involved and then they get good. And then all of a sudden, well, wait a minute, they're better than the old guys now. So you need to quit doing that. And it's just like, guys, come on. But like you said, yes, it helps them find fish, right? But with the live scope being there, now all these sacks are having to get heavier in order to win. You still have to know where to go in that lake to find those 5 and 6-pounders. You take that. I mean, I live right here on Clarks Hill Lake in Georgia. I don't know if you've ever been here before, but anyway,
I was there for a college. Clarks. Yeah, I was just there last year for a college or an open. I can't remember.
Okay, yeah. So they've anyway, that's like 10 minutes from the house here. So that's where I typically fish when I go, and it's just a monster lake. So you can go out there and have 10 live scopes on your boat and still not catch anything, or not catch the right fish. Like you said, you have to know where those big fish are at. So I think that the live scope, in my opinion, has made it more interesting for me to watch again, because I get to see all this new blood, these new guys coming in. When that, was it, I don't want to say this wrong, but was it Fisher and I that like shook the fish off and like, because he saw a bigger one on his screen? I mean,
that's a bigger one ate it.
That's next level.
I asked him about that, and he said, I did that accidentally in practice one time. Like he didn't shake it off, but the fish he hooked spit it out and the bigger one ate it. So he's like, now it only works like 20% of the time or 10% of the time. But he's like, when that happens, I know that there's a possibility if I hook a smaller fish that I can pull it out of their mouth and perhaps the bigger one will eat it. And so, and he did, like you said, he did that in a tournament, and it's just knowledge. It's just experience and watching things that happen. And to me, man, I compare this a lot to cell phone trail cameras for deer hunters. And people don't like it when I bring that comparison up, but I'm like, well, a traditional bow hunter started with a recurve or a longbow. Then compound bows come around, and the technology on compound bows with carbon fiber and all the technology and the cam shapes and all that stuff, and the let off, the 85% let off. The traditionalists, even guys that started out with round cam compound bows, were complaining about guys that had they were pulleys and then they went to cams. And it's like, well, that's not fair. Even Pope and Young had an asterisk by people that killed a Pope and Young buck with an 85% let off. And then they changed the rule to adapt to the times. Mechanical broadheads went from, fixed broadheads to mechanical broadheads that didn't work so well. And then Rage broadheads came out with their camming blades. And it's just technology that advances it. Then when Cuddyback came out with trail cameras that offered video, it went from photographs to with a timestamp on it to videos with timestamp, and then it became live cell phone timestamp, so you knew where the buck was during daylight hours, and you could literally go in there and increase your chances to kill a big buck because you're getting these videos on your cell phone. And so people call it, spotlighting fish because of the cone of the sonar and all that stuff, and what you're seeing, the live view that you see. But I still think that we're all in the outdoor industry together, and like you said, we don't want it to die. Just a few years ago we were talking about how close we were to losing the young generation in the outdoor world, and that we need to recruit kids. We need all you dads and moms out there need to take your kids to this and that and get them involved in the outdoors. And like you said earlier, now that this is happening, there's a huge wave of young anglers coming up in the higher levels of tournament bass fishing, because there's so many there's probably not a weekend from, April 1st to September 30th on most lakes that have good bass fishing in it, that they don't have even if it's a small tournament, they have tournament access. I mean, Dylan Nutt even said, on the podium when the media was asking him questions in his post win interview, how many tournaments do you fish a year? And he said probably 25 or 30. And it's like, well, that's 2/3 of a year right there. That takes the winter out of the picture. Then all of a sudden, it's like this kid fishes tournaments almost every weekend. So does Fisher Anaya. So does Tucker Smith. So does Hayden Marbot. All these guys they're constantly fishing, and I feel like you said earlier, um, the bashing of these young men is terribly disheartening. I can't stand it. I'm just like,
Me neither.
dude, you don't have to like it. You don't have to like live scope. Don't use it. Go fish, go watch NPFL or go fishing without it. I do. Me and my son go fishing all the time. I have live scope on my boat, but I go fishing without it all the time. And so it's like it's a choice. And for people to bash these young men for accomplishing the achievements that they are at the highest level in the sport today is to me is just it's just disheartening, and it's so negative. If anybody's ruining the sport, it's the negatrons out there bashing these young people.
I agree, man. And I'm glad you feel the same way. Since you have been filming with these guys for so long, you're older guys in the game. And I know what some of them say because they'll come on social media and say, and most of those guys, at least publicly, aren't bashing these young guys. But what are you kind of seeing out of the older guys? I'm not asking for specific names of guys, but out of the older guys that are on the tour, the guys that were there before Live Scope, how did they feel about this on the tournament scene at this high level?
I think it's changing. I think, again, I'm going to go back to Patrick Walters, Chris Zaldane, um, Jason Christie. I could name a bunch of them that were using live scope in elite level tournaments and winning tournaments, and no one said a word. No one said one thing about live scope, how they were doing it. In fact, everyone was in awe when Patrick Walters won that Lake Fork event, and he was live. He was literally live scoping out in open water with a jerkbait the whole time. And he catches, I forget the records that he broke, but he smashed records, right? And no one said a word. And now all of a sudden, this big wave of young people coming up, they're getting hammered left and right. And you know, I think to answer your question specifically, I think the older guys are getting used to it and they're changing. It's changing their minds. Um, Probably the best example of the acceptance of live scope from a really much older, much more experienced, and one of the best bass fishermen of all time is Rick Clunn. And he and Cody Huff live in the same town, and they spend an awful lot of time with each other. And Rick Clunn passes on his wisdom and knowledge to Cody, who's a lot younger. Cody teaches him what he knows, teaches Rick what he knows about live scoping. And Cody was at one, there's so many of them now. It's hard to say, well, who's the best live scoper in the world?
Right.
There was a time just a few years ago when Cody Huff he was out there in 40 and 50 feet of water, and I was in his boat, and he was throwing small baits at these pelagic fish in open water, and I was dumbfounded, like, oh my God. Then there would be like 30 smallmouth, 3 to 4 pound smallmouth come up off the bottom in 40 feet of water chasing a little bait because they saw it, and
Crazy.
they were activated by the one fish that was swimming in open water, um, suspended. And I was watching his live scope going, this is unbelievable. And then I was with Kyoya Fujita on Toledo Bend in Louisiana or Texas at the time, win that tournament, and he was watching fish spawn in 30 feet of water on dead tree limbs, like horizontal tree limbs that were coming off the
Really?
trees. The bass were up there spawning in the tree limb in the pocket of where the limb and the trunk met. And it's just like, holy cow. Like, how can you not appreciate learning more like what we've never known about largemouth bass or smallmouth bass? I've done podcasts with a walleye, a professional, a couple of weeks ago, and they're having the same issues in the walleye world. And one of my best friends on Kentucky Lake, he's one of the best crappie fishermen on Kentucky Lake, at least on the, down in the Paris Landing and Camden and Big Sandy area. And he uses live scope to catch crappie. And, it's the same thing. They're learning new things about crappie fishing, but they don't go out and catch 30 crappie every day with live scope. There's some days where they might only catch 8 or 10 or 12 crappie, and they're seeing them and they just don't they still can't figure out how to get them to bite. And I don't think live scope makes fish bite. They just show up. You can just see them better, but you can't make them bite if they don't want to eat.
You're talking about the crappie. I just released a podcast today, and it's, again, I'm right here at Clarks Hill Lake. So one of the better crappie guys, in my opinion, on Clarks Hill Lake. He owns a guide service here, and he just levels the cooler most of the days with crappie. I asked him about live scope in the crappie world, and he said the same thing. He goes, dude, he's like, the last 2 days I've got my butt handed to me. And I mean, he's on the water 250 plus days a year, and he's like, that live scope don't put the fish in the boat for you. I mean, he said the same, almost verbatim what you just said. So, I think it's long story short, it's another tool that's advancing, no different than when side scan, down scan. I mean, like, where do you stop? Do you go back to the flasher days? Do you go back before then? Do you take the big motors off the boat where you can't run 80 miles an hour? Do we?
Where you have to make your own rod and weave
Dude,
your own rod and make your own hook,
Well, one thing I know that we all know is the only constant in life is change. So everything's going to continue to change, and I think people just are going to have to learn to adapt. And I hope that even if people don't like live scope, that they'll do exactly what you said. You can always just keep on scrolling by. don't take these glory away from these young kids. It's no different than in the hunting world or anything. It's like everybody always wants the kids to get to doing something and then want to hate on them for it. And I'm just like, it drives me up the wall. But I mean, you're not going to get all the negative Nancy's out there, but that was a pretty interesting perspective on that. While we're on fishing, let me ask you about, being that you have been doing this for so long, what's like top one or two most memorable moments while you were in in the back of a guy's boat filming? I know there's got to be something that sticks out.
There are so many. I mean, there's just so many. In 15 years, you accumulate, you know, big moments that stand out. So it's hard to nail that down. I mean, I could go on and on, being in the boat with Greg Hackney or Taku Ito or Fujita or Lee Livesey or whatever. The two most pivotal experiences that I've ever had filming at that elite level. One was the very first win I ever videoed. This was before live. It was all for post production, but I videoed Takahiro Omori win the Wheeler event. And aside from the things that I learned about how he was catching those fish, was I felt like I was a part of the win because I was in the boat with him for the day 3 and day 4. And in the happiness and in the rejoice of everything, in the win, you just get included. My video clips were showing up on TV. They were showing up on TV commercials and things like that. So that really changed my perspective on being a part of. And I compare being a camera guy at this level to being like a caddy for a pro golfer. And
Makes sense.
you build some chemistry. Like, I know how to dance with the anglers in the boat when they're circling the boat trying to land a big fish on a spinning rod or whatever it is. I've been there so long, I understand how to move and stay out of their way, yet get the right footage. And so, when I filmed Takahiro Omori win Wheeler, it changed the way that I film because I understood now that I'm actually a part of this, and I can either do something really wrong or I can do something really right. And the best thing to do is to stay out of their way, but I still have to do my job. So that was one thing. And the other one is when Jason Christie won the Bassmaster Classic at Lake Hartwell in 2022. I was with him in 2018 when he had a 6-pound lead, and he choked. All he had to do was catch 5 legal fish. He had a 6-pound lead. No one was going to catch him unless they just had some freak monster bag. And he caught 4 fish, and he ended up coming in third. And that was when Jordan Lee won his second in his back-to-back classics. So I was with him during that time, and I had to stick a camera in Jason's face because that was the first year we had to film from the boat ramp to the arena, and it's a 45-mile drive from Greens Pond over to the Greenville, not convention center, but the auditorium, the arena there. And so I had to stick a live camera in his face when he knew the whole time he just choked the classic away. And it's something that, he's come in second several times, and it was awful. It was an awful feeling. So fast forwarding from 2018 to 2022, they assigned me Jason Christie because of what happened in 2018. They put me in his boat day 1 at the 2022 Classic at Hartwell, which is the same lake he lost it on. And he literally just grinded this tournament out. He was live scoping in the morning and flipping docks the rest of the afternoon on all 3 days. And he ends up beating Kyle Welcher by, I think, 4 or 5 ounces in that tournament. And when he won that tournament, I'd already accumulated a lot of wins at that point, but I go all the way back to Takahiro Omori and his win on Wheeler. I felt like I was a part of that win in the Classic, and it's something that Jason and we were the only 2 people in the boat for 3 days. He wins the biggest tournament in his entire life, and something he really needed to do to solidify him as one of the great anglers of all time. And so he and I got really close. We bonded. We're really good friends now. And so that had to be a huge highlight in my filming career.
That's cool, man. I tell you, you don't really think about the camera guy, right? I mean, most people, you see, you know the guy's there, but like you're right standing behind these guys the whole time, filming everything that they're doing. I bet, like when you're in a boat like that, I'm just like curiosity killed the cat at this point. I just want to know more about like your job. So when you're filming like that, especially once you make it to like day 3 of the classic, so are you literally like camera on shoulder the entire day, like nonstop?
Can y'all see that picture of, it's probably blurred out because the way I have the settings, but that's me. That's Taku Ito on St. Clair when that was the moment that Taku really became relevant and famous in the professional bass fishing world. And that's pretty much how I stand the whole time.
Jeez.
I'm there. You have to be ready because when part of filming a catch is filming the hook set. I mean, that's a huge part of it, right? So we have to be ready. We have to be ready when they set the hook, level camera, framed up properly, and we're in go mode the entire time so that when they do set the hook, we capture that. And our job isn't just, I don't look at it like this is my job or this is for me. I look at this like my job is to capture, because money made in the professional bass fishing world is not tournament money. It's money made outside of tournaments. It's sponsorships, plugs, promoting themselves on social media, monetizing values however they can. And there's no bigger stage for any of them, none of them, than being on a live camera at a moment where something big happens to them. So I feel like if I miss it, it's my responsibility to make sure that I don't miss it, because that is their time. It only lasts a few seconds or a few minutes at the most. And if I'm not ready, then I'm failing my angler, because that's his time to shine.
Yeah, and no pressure, right? No pressure, right? You got to film for 8 hours a day for that one bite. Some days.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's five big bites is what you're really filming, and all the rest of them are filler for the TV show. But the big moments when they really get the publicity for their sponsors, their boat, stickers, jersey, logos, all that stuff, and even what they say and how they talk about how they caught that fish with their electronics or their trolling motor or whatever played a part in that moment, they get to talk about it. So it's really important that we're on our A game, every second of the whole day. And it was hard for, man, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. It was really hard because it's hard to just stand there with a 20-pound camera all day on your shoulder. But after a while, it just becomes a part of your body. And I walk around like this all the time with a camera on my shoulder,
It's just what you do.
Yeah. And when I go to the gym, I work out every morning before work in the gym. And when I walk I don't run on the treadmill with a weight, but when I'm walking, I incline it to, 6 or even 15 incline, and I carry a 20-pound dumbbell, a fixed dumbbell on my shoulder, so that I get that exercise in, knowing I'm going to have the stamina to hold it all day long in a tournament.
Pretty wild, man. It's just like stuff normal people like us just don't ever think about. But hey, if it wasn't for guys like you, I while you were out there doing that, I was eating Cheetos, sitting on my couch watching it live, watching it live. No, well, no, I wasn't complaining about live scope, but no, I've got a couple young guys that are live around here that fish a lot of tournaments. Matter of fact, one of them won one of the qualifier events last year and is on the Elite Series now. He actually fished the Elite, the Classic. Caleb Hudson, have you met him yet?
Yo, yeah.
Yeah, so Caleb and Tanner, his business partner, they own TNT Marine. Shout out to those guys on this, but and I do a little business with those guys. But those are two young guys there that I really admire, and I admire them because of their work ethic. I don't even. I'm much older than those guys. I mean, I'm 38. These guys are young 20s. So in the grand scheme of things, I'm not like super close with them or anything like that, but I can still admire their work ethic because I know it doesn't matter if you're fishing, you still have to put that effort in 110% to make it to that level. And those guys like Tanner was over here today and, we're dealing with some boat foam stuff. I told you I did boat foam, and I got to talking to him about LiveScope. Told him I was doing this podcast with you today, and he said, I said, Tanner, how many days a year are you on the water? And he goes, 250 plus. He's like, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, he goes, a lot. So I mean, those guys like that. I mean, you've got to respect the effort, and it don't matter how they're catching fish. 250 plus days a year on the water. Like you said, there's tournaments and Clark Hill's no different, dude. Every weekend, it seems like year round, you go up there and there's all these tournaments. So, which made me think about something. One last thing about fishing before we move on. Another thing, and tell me if I'm wrong, but when I was growing up, there weren't a lot of like high school leagues or like now all these high schools around here all have fishing teams. That wasn't a thing when I grew up. So it was like if your dad wasn't into tournament fishing or your dad didn't take you fishing or whatnot, you just weren't exposed to it on that level. Now with these high school tournaments, it seems like these kids are getting more involved to be competitive, which is great if that's what you want to do at like a younger age. So they're becoming elite a lot faster than what they may have become elite 15, 20 years ago because they do have that tournament experience. Whereas a guy 15, 20 years ago might not start getting that till he's, 18 years old or something. Do you think that's fair to say and what you've seen?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can elaborate on that too because they're used to cameras because they're filming. The college. I mean, there's a whole bunch of universities out there that give full ride scholarships to these high school kids that are really good at Bethel College, Stephen F. Austin. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, there are recruiters at these high school tournaments with big checks just waiting on the winner to be announced to offer them full ride scholarships to college. So they're not only learning how to fish, they're getting free educations out of this. Like like I said before, like you said, when we were young, there was no high school fishing when I was a kid. There was
Me
no
neither.
college fishing when I was a kid. And so the youngest guy I remember coming into the elite level bass fishing when I was a kid, or when I was young, was KVD. I remember he came into the top that elite level of bass when he was 18 years old, and he was winning right off the bat. Like he literally was just great from the get go, just like these young Easton and Tucker and Dylan now and all these guys. And they treated him the same way because he was young. He was a Yankee from Michigan that came down south. He was butting into a southern sport, and he was just killing everybody. He was crushing it. So, it's not like the criticism has just started. It's just shifted into live scope. And I just don't think the masses, the general masses that are against it, I just don't think they realize they're gonna age out. If you have that attitude, I promise you, I've been around this game long enough to see it and understand now that and I've filmed high school national championships, college national championships, college brackets. And the number of young people coming up in the bass fishing world, they're not just anglers, they're fans too. They're bringing their families along, their younger siblings, their friends. When Dylan Nutt won the Classic Championship and he got back to the Marriott Hotel, he had 15 or 20 of his buddies from college that were spraying him with champagne. And, you
which
know,
is awesome.
it's awesome. It's freaking great, man. That's how he
Yeah.
should feel. He should feel like a king because he just won the greatest pinnacle of in the bass fishing world. And I just don't think people understand. Like, man, there's more coming, and it's not going to stop. They don't care. They don't. You don't even. The bashers don't make them nervous anymore. They don't.
Right.
They've learned to be thick skinned and to just let it be right off their back. And if they didn't, then you wouldn't see Trey McKinney and Easton Fothergill making top tens or top fives in these elite events. They just don't care what you think. And I don't blame them. If they did, they wouldn't be able to accomplish. They wouldn't be able to focus on what they're doing if they cared what all the negativity was all about. They just don't listen to it anymore.
They're too busy winning to worry about the haters, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
and winners typically aren't sitting around complaining with anything in life. So, anybody out there listening to that, take that to heart. If you don't listen to anything else I said today, well, that covered pretty much most of that on the bass fishing. Before we get off of here, though, I have to talk to you about duck hunting because I know you're a duck hunter. I know you bow hunt deer, big game hunt. You do a lot of hunting, but with me being kind of a waterfowl centered podcast, can you talk a little bit about your days at RNT?
Yeah, so I started filming for RNT in 2001 and did that for 22 or 23 years. I was Jim Ronquist's sidekick cameraman, along with Blake Fisher when he came into the scene a few years later. Um, yeah, was a part of almost all the RNTv TV shows for many years, up until a few years ago when I just kind of, um, I don't know, moved on in life, and Jim got a job with Drake Waterfowl, and we just kind of went different ways and directions professionally. But I was co-owner in a big outfit in Western Nebraska called Prairie Rock Outfitters, and we had over 300,000 acres leased on 28 miles on the North Platte River. And we kind of put the North Platte. It's been a great place to duck hunt forever, but it was one of those places where I think we kind of, we exposed it and put it on the map because there's so many ducks. Our property literally would hold 1 million mallards every winter.
That's
Um,
wild.
just our property alone. That doesn't include, the surrounding area. And so, RNT gave me um, that direction into the waterfowl world. I learned a ton from Jim Ronquist and, cut my teeth at RNT in the waterfowl world and just kind of grew up, grew up in the filming industry. And that was back when, there weren't that many people doing it. There was a handful of us we could get jobs, there was just opportunities galore at that time because the cameraman concept really didn't exist.
Right.
Um, and then, as TV shows became more popular, and then all of a sudden social media, came to the forefront of exposing things with either live or pre-recorded edits or whatever it was. It just created more opportunities, more jobs. And then all of a sudden, the video world and the freelance video world became a thing, and it exposed a new opportunity in the outdoor world. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to every young person out there that wants to do it, because at the end of your career, which you don't know when that's going to be, you age out of it, and it's kind of a dead end road. Because if you think about it, if you stop filming um, waterfowl or the outdoor industry or whatever it is, if you get too old to do it, then what do you have? you have a bunch of videos. You've got, unless you saved every penny that you made, which is not a ton of money. It pays better than it did 15 years ago, but you just don't have an entity. You don't have something tangible to sell. So if you're going to get into, filming in the outdoor industry, build something, build an agency. But if you build an agency, build a studio, build something you can sell and build as a legitimate business instead of just staying in the freelance world the entire time. Because once you age out and nobody wants you anymore because there's a bunch of young kids under you that they can pay less and have better, access to whatever AI is going to be 10 or 15 years from now,
Yeah, no kidding.
you're going to struggle. So just remember that. That's the best advice I can give young people that want to do this.
Man, I bet that was a pretty fun time though. You said over 20 years filming with the RNT?
Yeah, in Canada, all over, all over the country with RNT, out west, down south, the northeast, Midwest, Canada,
All
all those
over.
places. Yeah, and then when as you were talking about the End of the Line podcast, when I was co-hosting that with Josh Webb and Rocky LaFleur, um, my series, my little mini series, The Climb, inspired Ramsey Russell. And I had a talk with Ramsey. He was a bit bashful, didn't think he was worthy, didn't really care about his story because of his accident when he got burned and all that.
Right.
And we had a long talk, and I said, just listen to my podcast, The Climb. You'll understand that people embrace struggle more than they embrace success. When you succeed too much, you get bashed, as we all know, because we've been talking about it for an hour now. But when you struggle, people embrace that because a it's like, you know um what's the old saying about agony? Misery loves company, right?
Oh, yeah.
So when you struggle, people relate to it because everyone struggles. There's not one person out there. If you don't have a pot to pee in, or if you're a billionaire, you have struggles in life, whether it's family or personal. You don't like the way you look in the mirror, or you wish you were someone else, or you got, you were born with a disability, or you're short, tall, fat, skinny, whatever it is, there's always something you don't like about yourself. So I think when Ramsey heard my podcast, it convinced him, okay, well, maybe we'll tell the story. So we had Ramsey on, we did the podcast. It was a massive success. And that's when Ramsey and I became really close and became really good friends. And he asked me to become his promotional, video and photographer for what he wanted to do with Get Ducks. And then I came up with the concept of, let's just tell your story. Let's go to these places, different places, and tell the story, not just the story about let's go duck hunting in Azerbaijan and kill a bunch of, European widgeons or whatever. Let's actually tell the story. Let's get the people involved. We'll talk about your relationship with the people that were hunting, how they struggle. They live in poverty, or they live in, in oppression by their communist governments, or whatever it is. We told that story. And so the Life Short Get Ducks became a huge success, and really, exposed Ramsey for who he really is and what he truly does, which is literally travel all over the freaking world to duck hunt. And I learned a lot from him, especially how to find ducks in weird places.
Yeah, and there are some ducks in some weird places for sure, or sketchy places at least.
Everywhere.
Yeah,
There are
there
ducks
is.
everywhere.
There really are. And I think that's part of what I love about waterfowl hunting is there's every little corner. I mean, you can go to the desert and find ducks. You can go to the mountains in some areas and find ducks. I mean, the ocean and find. I mean, it's just, and they're all different, flavors and varieties, and they all do different things, but it's all the same concept at the end of the day. So, considering you've filmed with RNT for so long, and are you still waterfowl hunting a pretty good bit now?
Yeah, not as much as when I sold my shares at Prairie Rock, and I was guiding a lot there and hunting a lot. I didn't hunt very much, but I guided a lot of days, and we had went mid October to the end of January, even in the middle of February if you count goose season out there. So I spent a lot of time guiding. Grew up hunting on Kentucky Lake and the Camden Bottoms. I've been a duck hunter since I was 3 years old, and just loved it. I mean, when I was a little kid and show and tell, when somebody brought a pocket knife to school, or some flowers, the girls would bring a flower, or whatever they brought to show and tell. I brought duck heads. I brought pintail heads and wood duck heads and green heads and green winged teal. That's what I brought them frozen. And I had a whole section in our stand up freezer when I was a little boy where I kept duck heads frozen in the freezer. And I literally at night would go to the freezer and open the door and literally just admire the colors and the iridescence that they had. And I was just eaten up with waterfowl hunting as I was as a little boy. So, being able to do that as a living in a professional, um, as a professional concept was just a dream come true for me. And so when I started having children, I have 3 kids of my own that they're about to all flip a year. So they'll be 14, 12, and 8. Um, Guiding took a lot of my time away from my children when they were um, infants. And
Right.
so when I sold Prairie Rock Outfitters, I decided to pull back from that. And living in Colorado, it's much different than living in Camden, Tennessee, 2 miles from the Camden Bottoms. I can't just go duck hunt, um, you know, 20 minutes away for 2 hours, and then come home before my kids wake up. I have to be more present, based on where I live now. So, excuse me, while I don't duck hunt as much as I used to, it's all because of my children and time spent with them. And I take my son duck hunting. Don't get me wrong. He's hunted at Greenbrier and Screaming Wings. Like, he's hunted in some really cool places in Arkansas and all over Western Nebraska. But we just don't do it as much. I don't do it as much as I used to.
I understand. So I guess where I was going to go with that was you've, you've been duck hunting. How old are you? You're a little over 50, I think you told me.
I'm 50. I'll be 57 in a month.
What, man, I wouldn't have guessed that. But
Yeah.
anyway, so you've been duck hunting quite a while. So I like to ask anybody that's been duck hunting as long as somebody like you has, how do you feel like it's changed? Do you think that, and what I guess to be a little bit more specific, do you feel like the duck hunting now is worse than what it used to be? Are the numbers, compared to when you were younger, does it seem like there's a lot less birds around? How do you feel about that?
So I lived through the 80s. The mid 80s were rough. I mean, that's when, we went from the federal duck limits, went from the point system to the species specific numbers in a daily bag limit and a possession limit. So and it changed because there was, that's when the topic of lead shot was becoming more prevalent. Bald eagles specifically were eating wounded geese and ducks that had lead shot in their necks, and X-rays revealed that it was supposedly killing the eagles and the red-tailed hawks. So that's really what spearheaded, the changes that were made from lead to steel, and it was just steel back then. There was no bismuth or tungsten or any of that stuff.
And from what I understand, the steel back then was junk,
Oh,
like
man,
back in those days.
Well, the only steel shot you could get back then were skeet loads, literally skeet loads for trap shooting. And then Federal and Remington started making their own loads with steel shot, and we had to learn to lead the birds a lot further because it didn't carry the velocity and kinetic energy at longer ranges. So and then they started making 3.5 inch shells, and they were just trying to figure out how to create more power and steel shot or bigger loads and all that stuff. So I've lived through that transition and that revolution in the waterfowl world, and adding to all that, the mid 80s, 1983, 84, 85, and 86 were days where we hunted, me and my buddies, and even my dad. My dad was a huge duck hunter too. And we would go out, literally sit in a duck blind from daylight until dark for one pair of ducks to kill. And, and if we killed a mallard, it was just, it was huge. It was like, I mean, they
Christmas
might,
morning.
yeah, it was like they might as well all been banded, right?
Right.
And we actually killed more bands back then because they were trying to figure out a lot more information about the birds' migratory patterns, where they were dying, why they were dying, and all that stuff. And so we killed more bands per harvest, I would say, in the big picture. But I don't think um, right now there's less ducks than there were in the early and mid 1980s. There's just no way, because we struggled so hard just to kill a duck. And that's back when, you really people learned a lot about who was really passionate about waterfowl hunting, because the guys that stuck with it and lived through those years, those were the guys that were really the pioneers of the new wave of duck hunters coming up, beyond the market hunting and all that stuff that existed back then. And so, and then we lived through, when I moved to Colorado in 1990, I discovered the North Platte River in western Nebraska. And I had lived through parking lot fights and people stabbing each other's tires and sabotaging their boats and burning duck blinds and all that stuff in the Camden Bottoms. It was notorious for all that nonsense. And when I moved out to Colorado and found the North Platte River 2.5 hours away from where I lived and I was going to college, like I remember sitting in it. I remember reading an article in a North American Whitetail magazine about this area that had produced some really big whitetails for some bow hunters, and that were highly publicized. So I went out to this area and exploited it myself. I hung a deer stand or three or four, and I was sitting in one morning, the first morning I hunted out there. This was in 1991. I was sitting in my tree stand, and at daylight, these mallards, like I'm telling you, thousands of mallards were dumping into these potholes in the woods that I was bow hunting in, and I'm like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. I've never. It's like you're hunting on greenbrier in the Grand Prairie, in central Arkansas. Like it was that kind of mallard population. So when I got down out of my tree stand, I was completely overwhelmed by the number of mallards that I saw. So I went to this convenience store right down the road, and I opened up this paper map, and I said, "Can I duck hunt in this area?" And this old grizzly uh, guy with a cigar in his mouth that owned the convenience store, he goes, "Yeah, you can hunt there." They didn't care about duck hunting out there at the time. And I said, "Are you sure? Because I've seen so many ducks and I never heard one shot." And he goes, "Yeah, you can hunt there. I already told you you can hunt there." And I said, "Do you know, should I call it a game warden?" He goes, "No, you can hunt there. I'm telling you, there's just not that many people that duck hunt." So I shift everything into my duck hunting mode. And
Smart man.
I just started going out there every single weekend I was in college. I was going out there to duck hunt, and for 8 years, this is no lie, as much as I can recall, for 8 years. Every day I started a guide service before I moved out there, and I was publicizing on a website called Water Dog TV. Um, and so, which is how I got into the whole bass world. That's a whole nother conversation. But I was publicizing my photos on this website. This was like early chat room, early social media, and these people were catching on to it. So I was getting customers from Florida and Virginia, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, all over the country. They were coming out, and I was getting them a hotel room, and they'd take them duck hunting. And for 8 years, Robbie, not one time did we ever leave the field without our limits of mallards. For 8 years.
I couldn't imagine that, man.
It was unbelievable. And I hardly had, there was one other group of guys that hunted in the area that I was hunting in, and we became friends. So it was a friendly competition. We agreed to stay out of each other's way. It was just something that I wasn't used to. And I remember thinking to myself, man, am I going to ruin this by guiding it? And, I was really careful about how I selected my clients because I didn't want to take someone duck hunting that was just going to come in there and move in on top of me afterwards. So,
Right.
and that's how my professional waterfowl career really started. And we were killing so many ducks at that time. Started in 1995 is when I really started guiding hard. Um, and uh, we were posting so many pictures on Water Dog TV that they decided to come out. And I had a Chesapeake Bay Retriever at the time named Tanner, who was he was one of the best dogs I've ever had in my life. I trained him myself. I used the Mike Lardy waterfowl. He had a dog training video series. It cost like $150 at the time, and I ordered the whole thing. It was all on VHS, and I taught my dog through that video system. And when Water Dog TV, they finally caught on and said, we'd really like to come out and do a TV show about your dog Tanner, and I want you to take us duck hunting on the North Platte River. And that's when I met Jim at RNT. That's when everything just started blowing up in my life in the waterfowl
That's a
world.
really cool story, man. I know that, we don't, I know you or I neither one have enough time to talk about all the stuff you've done in your life. I really encourage people to go back and listen to some of those old End of the Line podcasts. You're going to have to do some digging. I know End of the Line's still out there because I looked it up yesterday, but go back and listen to some of these old stories. They're worth the listen, even though they're 8 to 10 years old at this point now. It's crazy how fast time flies, but it's definitely worth the listen. One last question before I let you go. I read somewhere that you've traveled and filmed, maybe you hadn't personally hunted, but filmed hunts or traveled to almost 50 countries filming. Out of all the places you've been, what's like top one or two like coolest places you've ever gone and hunted, whether it be you hunting or whether you be filming a hunt?
It's like
Hard again?
trying to pick the best angler, or the best moment fish
Right,
Bassmaster events. There's so many, Robbie. Um,
right.
you know, from a waterfowl perspective, since we're on that, I think one of the coolest places and the most beautiful ducks I've ever seen was in Peru with Ramsey. The white cheek pintails, just to me, they're one of the most beautiful ducks, and they're pintails. They act like pintails. They fly like pintails. They decoy. They don't decoy like pintails. They're just exactly the same, except they've got more colors, and they're just unbelievably beautiful birds. And so for that, and the number of cinnamon teal down there, I remember almost my whole life thinking I may not ever see a cinnamon teal. And then
I'm right there with you.
yeah, and then I hook up with Ramsey, and we go to places like Azerbaijan and Peru and Mexico and other places in South America where you see 50 in a flock. And so Peru was definitely one of the coolest waterfowl destinations I've ever been to. Um, but probably the two greatest places I've ever been in the hunting environment. One is going to surprise you. One people probably never even thought about. But I went to Uganda in East Africa, and
Okay.
it was still wild. Lots of Africa is either overrun with, I'm going to say this tongue in cheek based on what's going on in today's world politically, but most of Africa has been overrun either by Chinese development or radical Islam. And so there are very few places that you can go now to where it's still wild. It's still the old Africa that you see on planet Earth or whatever. And Uganda was one of those places. I spent, I think, 20 something days there, traveled the whole
Wow.
country, big game hunting, and it was unbelievably wild. Still as raw as it was, 100 years ago or 200 years ago, whatever it was. And then the surprise is gonna shock people. One of the most peaceful places I've ever been and the greatest big game hunting I've ever been a part of was in Pakistan.
No
Uh,
kidding.
no kidding. And we traveled the entire country from Karachi in the south to Islamabad to Gilgit, which is up where the three largest mountain ranges in the world, the Himalaya, the Hindu Kush, and the Karakoram ranges, all meet at this river, where these two rivers collide in Gilgit, Pakistan. And we hunted some of the most exotic and coveted mountain goats, called the Markhor. Um, and my client actually killed the world record, which was like a 49 or 59-year-old world record. I just happened to be there when we broke the world record, and it's the most coveted big game tag on the entire planet. And I happened to just get lucky enough to film the guy kill the world record, which may not ever be broken because it just shattered the old world record. So those are my big memories. And I've
I
like you
take
said, I've been to 49 countries.
I thought I read that. I think Bassmaster actually. I was doing a little bit of reading before we got on here, and I think they did an article about you, and I felt like I read that there. I take two things away from what you just talked about. Number one, you've lived a really cool freaking life. So
Thank
that's the
you.
first thing I've taken away, man. That you've, brother. It seems like if there was a life to live, you've done it for sure. It seems like it's coming for full circle for you now with your kids and all. But just all the stuff you've gone and done, I could probably just sit down for days and just listen to you. But the second thing I take away from that is if you take away politics and people problems, um,
Governments.
uh, culture problems, religious problems, just if you can just take away all that, Pakistan, I mean, some of the most probably unique and beautiful places on this planet, most of us will never get to experience because of people problems. And I hate it's like
Government
that.
government problems create people
Yeah,
problems. And the
yeah.
people, we're all humans. I'm gonna tell you two real quick things I'd like to
Go
add to
ahead.
that. One is I would take my mother to Pakistan. You know,
Really?
they're oh yeah. I would take my kids to Pakistan. I'm not saying every nook and cranny in Pakistan is the safest place to be, but I've hung out in Taliban country in the Hindu Kush right on the Afghan border, and they treated me like I was family. They fed us. They had, I mean, they made moonshine in the mountains there, and so don't judge people by governmental problems and political issues that you see in the media because the media blows that crap up way out of proportion. I'm not again, but you can find nasty nooks and crannies in Pakistan, but you can also find nasty nooks and crannies in Dallas, Texas, or
Yeah. I could
where
take you to some
my
right here in Augusta, Georgia.
a good wherever there's evil everywhere. It's not the people, it's the politics. So don't believe that crap. Okay, I've seen it. I've been there. I've seen it, and I get it. Um, the other thing is, forgot what I was going to say. It was about Pakistan, and I got sidetracked. There's one other place I was going to mention where travel. There's nothing like you said, you don't have to go to Pakistan to learn something new or to find, enjoyment in life and experiencing something different. You could literally go to the next town, or you could go 8 hours away, or go to drive to California. California, we all the those of us that are on the conservative side of things look at California like it's this big, complete disaster. But there are places in California that aren't that are politically compatible to what you believe in, and just like the what's the big refuge up in Northern California, the Delta, um, God, what's it called? It was at the tip of my tongue. There's probably more pintails in that around that Sacramento Valley National Wildlife Refuge than there are anywhere else. And cinnamon teal and snow geese, and it's very rich in waterfowl. And those people, this is what I was going to say that I forgot. It doesn't matter where you go, whether you go to Pakistan, they duck hunt a lot in Pakistan, believe it or not, and they shoot mallards and pintails there. Whether it's Pakistan, Peru, Mexico, Azerbaijan, Argentina, Camden, Tennessee, Sacramento Valley, California, Miami, Florida, Canada, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Manitoba, wherever you go, when you meet another duck hunter, I don't care where it is in the world, we're all the same. We think the same. We want the same things. Our goals are the same. You don't even have to speak the same language, because whatever you're hunting, when you're around the people that enjoy the same things, what you're doing is your language. And you're already friends with those people. They're not out to hurt anyone. They're just duck hunters. And I'm telling you, Ramsey Russell opened my eyes to that, because he took me to so many places in the waterfowl world around all over the planet. And I mean, we had conversations in our living quarters, wherever we were, many nights, going, these people are the same. Like they don't have a, a Browning Satori over and under. They don't have Bosch shot shells. They don't even have Gore-Tex jackets or waders that we have, but they're making do with garbage bags for waiters, whatever, or whatever gun that they can possibly get their hands on. They utilize, and they make decoys out of wood, out of copper wire and duct tape. Man,
Which is
milk jug,
awesome.
yeah, all kinds of stuff. And it makes you, when you see these things, it humbles you, and it makes you go back into your life and go, maybe I'm just a spoiled brat. Maybe I'm whining about getting water down my neck in a rainstorm while I'm duck hunting, because the jacket that I had, didn't wasn't efficient in that weather pattern that I was in. And then you look at these guys, they wear the same jacket every day. They wear the same jacket to the store as they wear on the duck hunt, and they just get by, and they don't care. So it humbles you in a way to where, you look at yourself more humbly. You look at yourself a little bit more with a little bit more perspective, and how much we have and how much opportunity we have here in the United States of America. And it makes you look at them like you appreciate them and their old school values a lot more than what we've forgotten about. So
I think the older I get, those old school values, especially when it comes to hunting, are starting to mean more and more to me. I don't even know how to describe it. They say that you go through seasons as a hunter, and not like, I don't mean like,
Stages.
summer, fall. Yeah, you go through stages, I guess, with not really seasons, but stages as a hunter. And I can appreciate that history and heritage and the slowing down. And, I've got the Sitka waders. I've got the Gore-Tex you were talking about. I've got all that stuff. Does it make you a better hunter? Absolutely not. Not at all. I've honestly got more respect for that guy standing in that, like when I've been to Mexico before, and the bird boys run out there to go get the birds, and they just roll their jean legs up and they're in knee deep mud with just their toes down in them. I got more respect for those guys. And here I am standing here in a pair of $1,000 waders. So you hit the nail on the head when you said Americans are spoiled. We are very spoiled. Jake, if you'll hang around just a second, we get done here, but I did want to come back and thank you again, man. I really appreciate you coming on. This has been really cool for me to listen to you on podcast 8 years ago, 10 years ago, however long that was now, and then now have you on mine. I think that the forward facing sonar perspective is really good. I think a lot of guys will get some good use out of that. I know I love your view on it. Our views are pretty much the same. And how we went from that to hunting Pakistan, I don't know, but I love it. That's part of doing a podcast, I guess, with me, or with anybody. You just don't know where it's going to go, man. Just let the conversation go. But thanks for coming on, and guys, thanks for listening to this episode.